Next up, we have Jen Director Knudsen. She's a journalist. She is an editor. She's the owner of TB Writing Company. And she is going to share with you something she wrote on The Longest Day.
Thank you. It's about 7 minutes long. Is that okay, Ben? Okay, then I will read the whole thing. In an effort to not be condescending, I do want to ask if anybody, please, with just a raise of hands, does anybody not know what the holiday of Yom Kippur is? Okay, great. So I'm just going to share one Hebrew phrase with you that I use at the very end of the essay, just so that it's not herky-jerky at the end. The phrase is tzom kal, and that just means have an easy fast. Okay. This is an essay that the Forward newspaper is going to publish in October. Is Yom Kippur the day of atonement or the day of post-traumatic stress? For me, a recovered anorexic, it's both. Liturgically, Yom Kippur is powerful, a day characterized by introspection, asking forgiveness, profound considerations about how to right wrongs and improve oneself. It makes sense it's a day of self-denial, including 25 hours without food, but deliberately starving myself terrifies me. My first year in college, doing so became a macabre game. Today I fast only one day a year, but every fall I fear the slippery slope back down into my disorder. At the beginning of freshman year in college, I rapidly gained the freshman 15. The cookies and ice cream were abundant in the minefield of a dining hall, where the rest of the food was pretty gross. I remember going through the lines where the hot, prepared foods looked and smelled like those from my elementary school cafeteria. And in Southern California, where fresh fruits helped define the region's pride of place, I was disgusted often to find rotten plums and tasteless oranges in the produce baskets. The thick chocolate chip cookies and bowls of coffee and chocolate ice cream filled the hole and puffed up my waistline. My clothes from high school started to fit poorly, tugging at my butt crack and straining at my middle. My face rounded out, my thighs got dimples, my periods became regular and very heavy. I felt stumpy. I was so glad when Yom Kippur year 57-51 arrived. I'd already made a few Jewish friends, and we attended High Holy Days services together at the church near campus, whose crosses were artfully covered with organza. I looked forward to breakfast that evening with my new friends, as well as to fulfilling my pledge to lose weight and gain greater self-control. Throughout that Yom Kippur day in 1990, every rumble of my stomach and my increasing hunger made me happy. At last, breakfast arrived, and a big group headed into town to a popular Italian place. It was very well known for its fresh, dense, perfectly round, steaming bread rolls. Our table of hungry penitents consumed baskets and baskets of them. I ate a few rolls, but kept them to a minimum. I had fasted, I'd done it. And I decided I'd always maintain a modicum of hunger. A growling stomach meant weight loss, and weight loss meant return to proper self-control and my pre-college body. The next morning, I went to the girls' bathroom and stood in front of its sole full-length mirror in my dorm. I pulled down my waistband beneath my navel and gleefully observed that my stomach looked flatter, tauter. I made eye contact with myself and smiled. My perilous weight loss journey began on Yom Kippur. That day's fast haunts me every year. Not engaging in the fast, however, puts me emotionally outside my community on a day of personal and communal reckoning. And yet fasting lands me back in my self-imposed food desert of my freshman year. As a young college student, my anxiety, perfectionist tendencies, and obsessive-compulsive habits manifested into anorexia, though I did not realize at the time that would be my destination. After full-blown anorexia had had me in its nasty grasp, in order to keep losing weight, instead of merely restricting my food intake, some days I went without food at all. They weren't that terrible, really. They just felt like Yom Kippur. There would at least be a meal at the end of the day, and the next day I was skinnier and happier with myself. But I wasn't actually happy. The more I restricted, the hungrier I got, and the more I fantasized about food, and especially the items I couldn't and wouldn't allow myself. I began dreaming about fluffy waffles drenched in syrup, dense cookies, satisfying pasta. When I would eat an apple, I even ate its core for need of something to chew on and send down to my twisted, begging stomach. A friend once said, "I've never seen anyone eat an apple like that." Embarrassed that my behaviors were becoming obvious when I only wanted to disappear and be invisible, I started to hide habits like this one and become more solitary. Between fall and late spring of freshman year, I turned 19 and I went from about 130 pounds on my 5'6" frame to a perilous 103. I stopped menstruating 10 pounds prior. My libido flagged, my appetite was ravenous. I shook with cold even on warm days. I often was lightheaded. My growling stomach could be heard across a room and turned heads. Every day was Yom Kippur. 2 loyal friends confronted me that spring and gave me an ultimatum. Either I march myself to the counseling office, or they would march me there. I marched there solo. Slowly, I started along the path to a long recovery. Today, 28 years later, I struggle still. I'm pretty sure I altered my brain chemistry, its response to starvation. When I fast, outwardly I demonstrate that going without food is no big deal. That's how I dealt with self-starvation, duping myself and others with an "I'm fine" facade. But internally, I start to panic. When will I next eat? Where will my next morsel come from? Year after year, girding my mind against panic to focus on the liturgy, atoning, contemplating my demise, it's exhausting. It's also scary. I know of others who have had a past like mine and struggle like I do. Talking about it, particularly on the holiest and most solemn of days, feels taboo. For a day characterized by both community and at one meant, Yom Kippur already is vastly profound. I long for the Day of Atonement, when fasting is a spiritual cleanse and not a post-traumatic stress experience. Tzom Kal. I wish you and myself an easy fast. Thank you.